Kanzu Code is something that came up while I was working a few years ago for a multinational corporation. I was leading a team building software, and I realized pretty quickly that one, we were building software for several million customers, but we were such a small team. And I realized really quickly that one, I was learning while building, which meant I was growing in my craft. But I also realized that very few people would get the opportunities that I had because of how small the team was. And then the other thing I noticed was we were buying software from outside. It was no local or even from the continent. So Kanzu Code came up as an avenue to make a Ugandan dent on the global technology ecosystem, for us to build local solutions solving local and continental problems. But more than that, also to create an opportunity for people like me, passionate about code, passionate about technology, to grow in their craft while building this solution. So it was a twofold thing. And Kanzu Banking was one of the first products. It was actually the first product that we released in that line. And how it came to be was that I was part of a SACCO of over 200 members, and there was a solution that we were using to manage the affairs of the SACCO. And looking at that solution and also being a member meant I was privy to the financial records. I felt that we were paying quite highly for the solution, and being someone who loves building solutions, I felt, man, I can build something better than this. So that's what I did. I saw the gaps in the system, saw the gaps in the solution, and went out to build something that I felt was much better than what we were using as the SACCO, and went about now trying to convince the rest of the members in the SACCO that, look, here's a much better thing that we should be using. I wish that story ended well. But no, they didn't see it, and we didn't get that business. But nevertheless, it was a great journey in learning a lot of other things around building a solution of this nature. And yeah, that's how Kanzu Banking came to be really. So while building Kanzu Banking at the time, really the primary goal was really build a better solution for this group of people I'm part of, so that we have something much better to use and easier and more secure. That's what I was primarily focused on. But over the years, the vision broadened. I started to see that this wasn't an issue unique to us as a group of individuals. And I started to see that across the entire, first in Uganda as well, I started to see that there were other people who could benefit from a solution like this that had come out of the work that I had done with the team. But then even as we went on doing that, I also started to see more and more that this is actually a continental issue, that there's a gap in that space in having a solid solution that takes into account local context, having integration for things like USSD, things like mobile money, and having really a core banking platform that makes it easy for an investment club and a SACCO to manage their affairs very easily. So the vision then grew to say, how do we make technology, make it simpler for any group of people doing investments on this, doing group savings on this continent to manage their affairs, all the way down to someone in Kotido, in Moroto, in a remote part of the continent, just trying to save in a VSLA. How do we make it simple for them to piggyback on the things technology already provides, so that they are not worrying about security, they are not worrying about some processes, tracking different things either on paper or in an Excel sheet. How do we eliminate that hassle and let them focus on what's actually at the core of what they should be doing, which is really growing their money? So the vision is making it possible for any individual doing group savings across the continent to take advantage of a context-aware core banking platform that helps them thrive in what they are doing. Well, it has been a very interesting journey. One of the challenges really was more around coming to the awareness that there's a bit of a disconnect around how the market generally perceives software, and as a result, how the perception around the value that software brings. But that perception then leaks into how we see pricing. So if the value isn't seen as high enough, when you talk about pricing, the pricing will be seen as too high, but really that's a disconnect around the perception of the value. And because of that, it became really difficult building a sustainable business model based on that perception. And we've seen that change a lot, and that has also skyrocketed, has changed tremendously in these last few months, given the pandemic, of course. But then also the other challenge was around the bureaucracy, given the kind of we're dealing with group investments, so money is at stake, and there's generally a way that these entities go about decision making. But that process from initial discussion to final, really starting to use a solution, that length also means that you still have to find a way to build a business model that isn't entirely reliant on, that really solves for while you wait for that closure, for that close to happen. So those two issues make it really, really tricky, but we found ways to make it work. So the other challenge was around the fact that as an entity, as Kanzu Code, while this is our flagship product in the market, we also support other businesses by building software for them. So we found a challenge around devoting resources on both sides of the equation, but over the years we've gotten much better and solved for that well, in terms of breaking out into separate teams, separate streams, that some are focusing on external work and others are focusing on this internal product. So those are some of the things we've had to solve for through the journey. I think the biggest thing, actually the really biggest thing that has helped us keep paddling through has really been the positive feedback we've received from our early adopters. It's really buoyed us forward and given us validation that we're actually delivering value, and that's at the heart of what we're trying to do here. So that positive feedback has kept us paddling forward. Another thing has been the team that we've built over time around this. It's one of the challenges I didn't allude to was the realization that it takes more than good software, good tech, to have a good solution. The realization that you need your sales and marketing putting out a solid, consistent message, bringing in a certain kind of client. Also realizing that you need your accounting arm and your finance arm just running really strong. So building a team around that and just having the right people covering those bases has gone a tremendous way in keeping us running and solving for this problem well and growing. One of the, coming from a background of writing code and just being passionate about, just doubling down and doing exactly that, while I had read about the value of the other parts of a product, things like sales and marketing and accounting, it had never properly registered that these are vital. You're not going to build it and they will come. So the knowledge was there, but a proper appreciation and understanding of exactly what that looks like in the market was one of the things that surprised me, that it's vital. You must have a solid marketing message, consistent. You must have a sales team that is prospecting and doing all these things well and getting better at it along the process. You must have good data that's coming in and you're reviewing it regularly. Also, you have, because it's a solution in the banking space, you have to have your accounting, your finance. You need those locked down really, really well. So those really surprised me, how important they are beyond just having a nice shiny tool. I was surprised by how really, really vital they are, that they're not just nice things to check off the box, they're not just nice add-ons, they are really at the heart of doing this really well. That's on the one hand. The other thing that has surprised me has been how big the community is in terms of people globally who are solving for this problem of how do we build inclusive financial solutions for people at the bottom of the pyramid. How do we empower people in emerging markets to take advantage of the different tools that are making them part of the financial sphere, really bringing them into the financial envelope so that they can benefit from a lot of things that some of us would ordinarily take for granted, because we have access to credit, we have friends and family who can in some way, in some form or fashion, help us get some ideas off the ground. But just my realization that there are so many people globally solving for this, that was a pleasant surprise for me. Realizing that there's good open source software out there and people have been working at it for years, and that the people in those communities are very willing to share knowledge, to work with you, to hop on a call and just help you work past a lot of these things. For me, that was also that was a very pleasant surprise, that you're not working in a silo. You're part of a global movement that is focused on solving for this thing well. In terms of where we would want to go, in terms of having, because given our composition as a continent, how young we are, it's really vital to get these core money principles in early for us, because thinking 20 years from now, if we get these things right, it changes the dynamic completely. So our vision, where we want to go, involves having everyone being part of some form of group investment on the continent, and harnessing that to make more solid investments. One case in point is a story that's fairly known publicly in this ecosystem in Uganda is Why Save Safaris. Very, very phenomenal story of a group of young people who came together about 21 years ago now, and were saving about roughly $1. As they did that, some of them started to get credit from that money that they were saving together. And one of them set up an institution, Victorious Education Services, which is one of the biggest educational institutions in this country today, with over 5,000 people going to it. But to think what would have happened if the proprietor of that institution did have access to that credit at that time, and that access was given to her primarily from her savings, but also the group investments that she took that money from. But even more than that, the ideas that group that she was plugged into, the group of people that are thinking a certain way and buoying your idea forward, that institution today is a multi-billion shilling institution, and so is the investment club. So where we are going is building the tools that are going to make it easy for any individual, any young person anywhere, plugging into an investment club and growing their finances. So Kanzu Banking is an initial step in that direction, and it's a solid few steps in that direction. But we still have a way to go in making it easier for you to track your expenses, to monitor your inflows, your outflows, to monitor how your income streams are doing, and giving you information that is pushing you forward as a young person and helping you make more and more informed financial decisions. So yes, we have taken a few solid steps in that direction, but I believe we still have a way to go before we are fully empowering you to the level we want to, with a full set of tools for that. There are, broadly speaking, there are two kinds of people we're trying to serve. One is the person in the remoter parts of our continent. They are a farmer and they have produce and they do. Some of them have already joined some group savings associations, but they are typically not part of the banked part of our population. So their access to credit is very, very limited. But also the challenges around, one, taking their savings into their local savings association weekly is a challenge in terms of the distance they have to cover, but also the security associated with having those lump sums of money with just an individual. So that's one of the people we're really passionate about eventually, about reaching and serving well, because it's really key for them to be plugged into an ecosystem where they can be scored, they have a credit score that doesn't rely on a bank statement, because they don't have a bank statement, yet they've been making mobile money transactions regularly. And they can get access to credit, finance their dream, get that idea off the ground, get that chicken farm off the ground. So it's really key for our solution down the road to be able to reach that person in the remote parts of the country and serve them well, to give them access to credit, but also give them access to credible information. It's not just the credit, but also credible information to empower them to make something beyond 1 year, starting with subsistence, which they're already doing, but then two, taking them a step further beyond that, so that they're not just fending for themselves. Because of the very high dependency ratio in our economy, it's key for them to be able to do more than just subsistence, but for them to build a sustainable income, not just for themselves, but also for the huge number of people that depend on them. The second person is someone who's already is underbanked. They do have access to a bank and might have a bank account, but the credit in the interest rate for credit in those institutions is a bit tough. And also the turnaround time for them to get that credit is also a bit of a challenge. So we are serving them by working with the club that they are working with, putting them, they're ready to encouraging them to get together to save. And as they do that, as they build the savings culture, for them to be able to get credit from that at a much lower rate than they would have outside that ecosystem. But more than the credit, they also have the benefit of, because they are part of a group that is in some form or fashion jointly bought into their success. They also have access to ideas, they also have access to support that will help them take their business from where it starts. And they're not just getting money, but they're getting more than that because of the community they are plugged into. So those are primarily the two sets of individuals that we are looking to solve for, and we are looking to empower. And tech is just one arm in that solution that Kanzu Banking is bringing, but altogether it's creating a community of like-minded individuals who are very sold out on solving for better savings culture and better investments across the continent. The financial services space globally has gone through a lot of changes over the past few years. One of the biggest things happening in the global space is because of the advent and growth of the blockchain technology. We've had a growth in crypto, a growth in usage and adoption of cryptocurrency, not so much yet here, but globally. When you think financial services globally, that's one of the biggest things that has to come into the conversation. Also, regulation has been changing to try and keep up because of the events that happened about a decade ago. We then had regulations starting to change around how money can move across borders and the kind of licensing that needs to happen and the kind of documents that one needs to have about their customers, what's typically referred to as the KYC. So globally, there's been a huge, a bigger emphasis on that to curb some of those issues. So the third aspect globally has been around security, because more and more transactions are happening online. That means that people's financial life globally is moving more and more online. So security has become a bigger issue. And the drive to secure payments online, and for just all the entities involved in that space just to double down and make sure in every way possible that people's transactions and money is secured. That also has been a key concern and one of the biggest things in the global financial space. On the continent, the biggest things that have been happening have been primarily around mobile money on the continent. It's the game changer that came into the space only a few years ago and drastically changed the rhetoric around unbanked people, drastically changed the rhetoric around hard to reach areas because of how it was rolled out. It came in at a time when the banking system that had made quite a number of changes in the West and across the globe really, hadn't made as huge an impact across the continent, but with mobile money coming in, it solved for the problem really well, and the numbers, the response of people to it is a testimony to how superior it was, and in many ways still is, to the traditional banking system that hadn't made as big a dent in the across the continent. Even for mobile money though, the adoption hasn't been the same across the continent. You'll have areas like South Africa and Nigeria where the adoption is not what it looks like in say Kenya and here in Uganda. So it's not a one size fits all. So even while we think of financial services space across the continent, we need also to think of contextualizing some of the solutions. So it's not necessarily one size fits all. Naturally also there's more growing concern around security also across the continent, around getting better at refining, making the solutions a lot more secure. And there's also a much bigger drive for what are called inclusive financial solutions. How do we reach the unbanked? How do we get them to, yes, start with doing a peer-to-peer payment, allowing them to send money from one person to another? But more than that, how do we allow them to do a lot more than that? Can we get them to make a payment to a merchant to join the ecosystem? Can we give them access to insurance products? Can we give them access to credit? So can we lower the costs of the transfer? Because if the person is sending a very small amount of money, how do we make it possible for them to do that sending without losing a big chunk of what they are sending? So across the continent, those are some of the really key things in the financial services space. We also see a lot of traditional banking institutions partnering and starting to wake up to and changing their models to be a lot more accommodative of technology companies that are playing in that space. So you have a lot of banks partnering with fintech companies to take advantage of their infrastructure, because they have access to infrastructure that the ordinary fintech won't have access to, but also still take advantage of what the fintechs usually excel at, and that is innovation and moving fast and charting new paths. So we have that marriage, those kinds of marriages starting to happen. And as a result, more and more solutions are popping up across the continent that are solving for different niches, solving for different problems. And every one of them is looking to do it better, faster, cheaper. In Uganda here, we do have a healthy mobile money ecosystem that is growing. We've done pretty well in the what's called the peer-to-peer transfer. That's one person sending money to another. But we still have a number of steps to take. We still have to do a lot in the space of merchant payments. Those haven't picked up as well as they have, for example, in Kenya, where mobile money is a lot more mature and has taken off a lot more in that merchant space. So we've also seen a growth in alternative products around mobile money. So you now have products for saving, you have products for lending around that entire ecosystem. And I believe we're going to see more and more things around that ecosystem. A marriage of the traditional banking infrastructure with the telecom mobile money infrastructure, with the things also that fintech companies are doing, bringing on board solutions that allow remittances, that allow merchant payments, that allow insurance products, that allow credit, savings, all kinds of products. We're going to see more and more of that. We're also going to start to see, a bit by bit, we're going to start to see cryptocurrency also start to make baby steps into our ecosystem. Just to, that won't happen overnight, that last bit, but more and more, we're going to see a push for adoption of these things and a growth in that space. And at the tail end, we'll see the regulation trying to keep up, trying to pretty much come in and protect consumers, protect merchants, and just trying to keep up and ensure that while innovation is happening, we are not being exposed as consumers inadvertently. You should really keep your ear to the ground. You should really care about inclusive financial solutions because they are changing the space completely. The most graphic way I think I can communicate that is think of what your life was before mobile money. There was a time before you were able to send money to someone in the remote parts of the country, to transfer money across the border, just using your phone. There was a time before that. There was a time you had to rely on the traditional infrastructure for things like that to happen. But now, with that switch, you now have access to credit. You now have a whole new world that has been opened up because of that, and it's allowing you, even in the face of a global pandemic, for you to still open up an e-commerce store and get paid and deliver goods and get your money and walk to a kiosk a few meters away from you and withdraw money. So inclusive financial solutions are doing that. They're making it possible for you to do a lot more with your money, cheaper, faster, and easier. So you should pay attention because the cost of sending money across the continent, across the world is dropping dramatically with the innovations happening in the inclusive financial space. You have things like cryptocurrency that are coming in, and yes, they might seem big and out there right now, but that's because they are still at a stage where the adoption is starting to pick up. But they have definitely changed the ecosystem, and they're going to change it even more dramatically. So try to imagine what it's like for you to have a friend right now who is not using mobile money and what they're missing out on. And in a sense, the things happening in the financial space, in the financial services space, can be akin to that, about these things happening and your head is down and you're not taking part in any way. So there are ways that your business can get paid faster, there are ways that your business can send money cheaper, easier, there are ways that your business can get access to credit. Every one of these things are things that are happening in this ecosystem, that are happening in this space. There are things that will make it easier for your business to, at a click of a button, pay different vendors at lower fees. It's a space that is bubbling over with a reason, and it really is. You really should have your ear to the ground. You really should, in any way, find a way to keep plugged in, to occasionally see what's happening, because more and more, especially now, while it was growing before, it's only going to keep growing, and even exponentially so because of the pandemic. So you really ought to, because while you do that, you'll discover cheaper, faster, easier, better ways, secure ways to do more with your money. Yeah.